The dawn was a timid thing in our suburban enclave, barely brushing the edges of the landscape with its feeble light. The quiet was sacred, a woven blanket of early morning serenity that draped over our little corner of the world. Each house was its own fortress of solitude, lined like soldiers along manicured lawns and identical driveways, the perfect postcard of suburban life. This was the stage where Karen chose to play her games, our HOA president, self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac. She wielded the rulebook like a scepter. Her eyes were sharp, always on the lookout, a hawk in sensible shoes. Her reign of petty terror was legendary. Tales whispered over fences and across dining tables, and here I was, her latest subject, ensnared in a web of neighborhood politics. The feud began with my Jeep, a sturdy creature. It stood defiantly on the street, its humble presence a thorn in Karen's side. She took it as a personal affront, each morning scowling as she shuffled past with her two leashed Pomeranians. The vehicle was my freedom, my escape, a symbol of my rebellion against the mundane. To her, it was a blight, a monstrosity that disrupted her perfectly curated view. The first note appeared one crisp morning, tucked under the wiper like a misplaced love letter. It was a summons in bold red ink, an accusation of crimes against the homeowner's aesthetic. "Move it," she demanded. I chuckled. Let the note flutter into the recycling bin. I had learned long ago that life was too short to dance to someone else's tune. Days passed. Her wrath simmered beneath the surface, a volcano waiting to erupt. Her eyes, always watching, boring holes as I loaded the Jeep with hiking gear or groceries. Her lips pursed in a line of disapproval. She escalated with precision. A tactician in passive aggression. Another note, this one taped firmly to my door. It warned of consequences, of bylaws and fines. I sighed, removed it carefully, and added it to the collection. Karen was nothing if not persistent. I admired her dedication, even as I refused to be swayed. I had expected the call. It was inevitable. Her final gambit, the shrill wail of sirens sliced through the dawn like a knife, splitting the silence apart. I watched from my window, the kaleidoscope of red and blue lights casting long shadows on the sleepy street. It was a scene from a movie, the kind where the hero stands against the tyranny of bureaucracy. I was no hero, just a man with a Jeep and a stubborn streak. The officers were professional, their expressions a mix of irritation and bemusement. They were familiar with Karen, her penchant for drama. I met them with calm, my voice steady, explaining the situation with a quiet resolve. Their nods were reassuring, an unspoken alliance against the absurdity of it all. Karen watched from her perch, a silhouette against the rising sun. Her arms crossed tightly, her victory felt hollow, the triumph of a queen over a kingdom of one. I stood firm, the Jeep unmoved, a monument to resilience, as the officers drove away, leaving us in the soft glow of morning. I knew this was but the first act. The stage was set for a battle of wills, a clash of ideals in the heart of suburbia. And so the game continued. The early morning silence had been shattered by the wail of sirens, leaving the neighborhood in an uneasy lull. The echo of Karen's 4 a.m. theatrics clung to the air like a persistent fog, refusing to dissipate. As the sun inched over the horizon, it brought with it a new day, ripe with the flavor of Karen's escalating vendetta. Karen, with her hair pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her very expression into a permanent scowl, had begun her campaign with a ferocity only she could muster. The HOA letter found its way to my mailbox with uncanny speed, its presence as unwelcome and looming as a storm cloud. The words inside were sharp, designed to cut and sting, detailing infractions that would have seemed absurd in any rational community. Too many garden gnomes. The letter scolded, as if the whimsical creatures were plotting an insurrection, an unsanctioned wreath on the door, a crime of festivity, absurdities dressed as rules, authored with the precision of a zealot. The neighborhood buzzed with whispers. The undercurrent of gossip, a living thing that twisted through hedges and over fences. Karen had become both judge and jury, her influence quietly pervasive. She wielded power like a scepter, ensuring everyone knew the penalties of defiance. My neighbors, once nodding acquaintances, now regarded me with caution, as if my proximity to Karen's ire might be contagious. The summons to an impromptu HOA meeting arrived with a formality that bordered on the theatrical. The invitation was not a request, but an edict, delivered with the iron weight of an inevitability. I imagined her standing at the helm of the meeting, her presence a black hole that drew all attention and dissent into a singularity of compliance. The building that housed the HOA meetings was calculatedly sterile, a place where creativity had come to die. Its walls were a drab beige, the color of indecision, and the chairs angular and uncomfortable, discouraging lingering thoughts or rebellions. Karen had taken her place at the head of the table, flanked by a cadre of supporters who nodded with the synchronized precision of marionettes. As she droned on about community standards and the sanctity of uniformity, I watched the others, faces turned towards Karen, their expressions a blend of resignation and furtive agreement. It was in these moments, as Karen's voice rose and fell with the practiced cadence of authority, that I realized the depth of her influence. She was a maestro conducting a symphony of control, and everyone was playing their part. Her eyes raked over the room, finally landing on me, a hawk spotting a mouse in the grass, a single eyebrow arched in challenge, a silent dare for dissent, a tableau of power and pettiness. Her gaze was met not with defiance, but with calm. I met her gaze with a steady, unreadable stare, a silent declaration that I would neither bend nor break. Karen's smile was a tightrope, stretched thin and brittle. In that moment, the absurdity of her reign was laid bare, a fragile facade masking insecurity. The meeting adjourned with the usual formalities, Karen's voice the last to linger, trailing after the dispersing group like a specter. Outside, the air was cool and liberating, the scent of grass and freedom, a balm to the soul. As I walked away from the building, my back to Karen's kingdom of rules and regulations, I felt a quiet resolve settle in my bones. The Jeep, parked defiantly in its usual spot, seemed to wink in the afternoon sun. Its presence was a promise that the battle was far from over, a reminder that, in the end, resilience would outlast tyranny. The dawn seeped through my blinds, dripping color onto the walls like watercolor. Sleep had been a distant friend, elusive and smirking in the shadows as my mind replayed the events of the night before. The distant wail of police sirens had long faded, but the chill of their presence remained, like a winter draft sneaking through a forgotten crack. Karen's 4 a.m. drama still hung in the air like stale smoke. Calling the police over a parked Jeep was a move worthy of a villain in a poorly written sitcom, but this was real life, my life, and I was determined to steer the plot in my favor. I sat at my kitchen table, fingers tracing the chipped edge of a coffee mug, pondering my next move. Revenge was not a word I liked. Too harsh, too final, but counteraction, that was something to entertain, a chess game where Karen made the first move. And now, it was my turn to strategize. The evidence lay scattered on my desk, photos of the parking area, all time-stamped, the HOA bylaws, highlighted in neon yellow, each pertinent line a beacon of my impending victory. I was meticulous, like a detective piecing together a mystery only I knew the ending to. Karen thrived on chaos like a moth to flame, but I preferred the steady hum of balance, the satisfaction that comes with being right. The irony, of course, was that she saw herself as a guardian of order, but all she sowed was discord, an orchestra of misplaced notes. Mid-morning light pooled on the hardwood floor as I began drafting my letter to the HOA board. Words were my weapon. Precision strikes crafted with the care of a watchmaker adjusting gears. Each sentence was deliberate, crafted to resonate with the board's sense of duty and justice. Karen's guests, the catalyst of this saga, were a footnote in my narrative. Their cars, lined up like supplicants before royalty, had no place in the designated visitor slots, a blatant disregard for communal guidelines. I wrote, the ink flowing like a river of retribution across the page. With the letter complete, I leaned back, surveying my work. It was a calculated move, not born of anger but a quiet insistence on fairness. I wasn't seeking dominion over Karen. I just wanted to remind her of the rules she claimed to uphold. The irony, thick and sweet, was that Karen had unknowingly given me the means to address her own transgressions. Her call to the police was a misfire, a boomerang with a faulty trajectory, destined to circle back. I sealed the envelope, affixing a stamp with a satisfied pat, and stepped outside. The envelope tucked snugly in my jacket pocket. The air was crisp, a whisper of fall clinging to the breeze. As I walked to the mailbox, the neighborhood was tranquil, a silent observer of our unseen war. Karen was outside, tending to her garden with the fervor of a general on the battlefield. Her eyes met mine briefly, a flicker of something: defiance, curiosity, or perhaps a sliver of doubt. No words exchanged, just a nod, a silent acknowledgement of the game we played. I slipped the envelope into the mailbox, hearing it settle with a soft thud. It was done, a countermove made with precision and patience. The board would convene, and the gears of justice would turn, slowly but surely. As I turned back towards my house, I felt a calm settle over me, a quiet confidence that the balance would be restored. The morning sun cast long shadows on the path, but my steps were light, buoyed by the knowledge that I had set the stage for the next act. And in this new chapter, the pen was firmly in my hand. The night the police arrived at my doorstep still lingered like an echo in the quiet corridors of my mind. HOA Karen, with her flashing eyes and theatrical gestures, had seen to it personally. The soft blue and red lights had danced across the walls of my living room, casting long shadows that seemed to mock the stillness of the suburban night. The morning after, I found a polite notice tucked under my windshield wiper, an official HOA warning, printed on blindingly white paper, accusing me of obstruction. The absurdity of it was almost artistic, the ink barely dry over the manufactured offense. I kept the paper, slipping it amongst my other collected souvenirs of her wrath, each one a reminder, each one a window into the world she tried so desperately to control, her domain, her kingdom of manicured lawns and perfect facades, threatened by the quiet rebellion of my Jeep's unmoved wheels. The solution, I knew, wouldn't be found in confrontation. The answer lay deeper, hidden within the silent power of the law, legal steps, not loud disputes, precision, not passion. I spent long evenings at the dining table. Documents spread like a fan of cards. Research became my quiet ally. The dusty pages of HOA bylaws and state statutes unfolded stories of their own, non-discrimination clauses, property rights, even the limits of HOA authority. Each paragraph was a step, each clause a foothold on the path to resolution. In the quiet of those evenings, I saw through the veil of control she sought to impose. Her authority was a construct, a castle built on shifting sand. The bylaws she wielded like a weapon became a double-edged sword. It was a gradual process, like piecing together a mosaic from shards of glass. I filed the necessary paperwork, a small stack of forms and evidence bound together with quiet certainty. My petition rested in the hands of a local attorney, a kindred spirit in the love of the law's quiet, deliberate dance. The hearing was set, a date circled on my calendar in quiet anticipation. The day arrived cloaked in the early whispers of autumn, the air crisp and filled with the scent of falling leaves. The meeting room was a stark contrast, all sterile light and crisp efficiency, a battleground devoid of fanfare. Karen arrived with her entourage, her demeanor a mix of forced composure and simmering irritation. The tables were set, positions taken, and the dance began. The arguments flowed like a measured symphony, each side presenting their case with choreographed precision. Her voice, sharp and clipped, sliced through the air. My attorney responded with the calm assurance of a maestro, guiding a crescendo. The judge, a gray-haired man with eyes like deep pools of patience, listened with the practiced ear of one who has heard it all before. In the end, a single statement from the judge, delivered with quiet finality, tipped the scales. The ruling fell like the closing notes of a sonata, reverberating in the sudden silence of the room. Karen's empire of control faltered, her carefully curated mask slipping for a fraction of a second. It was a look of realization, of understanding that her dominion wasn't as absolute as she had believed. In the quiet aftermath, as I stepped out into the open air, there was no triumph, no exultant victory, just a sense of equilibrium restored. My Jeep remained in its rightful place, unmoved, yet no longer a symbol of defiance, but of quiet resilience. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of amber and rose, I knew this was only a chapter in the ongoing narrative of our suburban saga, but for now, I'd claimed a small corner of peace, a moment of reprieve from the theater of the absurd. Dawn crept in like a silent witness to the night's absurdity, painting the sky in hues of resigned serenity. Karen's attempt to summon law enforcement at such an ungodly hour had left the neighborhood buzzing with a mix of disbelief and exhaustion. As her voice ricocheted through the crisp morning air, it became apparent that this was a climax, not of grandeur, but of pettiness. The echoes of her demands still lingered in the air like the residue of a stubborn perfume, yet the world moved on. The crisp chill of the morning was a stark reminder of reality's indifference to the trivial drama that had unfolded. My Jeep, the unwitting protagonist in Karen's theatrical production, stood resolute in its assigned spot, a silent testament to boundaries drawn and not crossed. As the early sun stretched its golden fingers across the sleepy cul-de-sac, neighbors emerged slowly, like actors reluctantly coming on stage, faces weary but intrigued. They surveyed the battlefield of egos and entitlement. Some exchanged knowing glances, others stifled yawns, but the unspoken consensus was clear: enough was enough. Karen, however, was not one to retreat quietly into the shadows of her own making. Her presence was a storm brewing on the horizon, ready to unleash its fury yet again. But this time, the storm met an unexpected wall of calm resolve. I stood by my Jeep, feeling the cold metal under my fingers as a grounding force, no longer just a vehicle. It was a symbol of resilience. The community, once divided by the invisible lines Karen had drawn, began to shift, tired of being pawns in a one-woman crusade. They gravitated towards a newfound unity. Murmurs of support reached me like a gentle tide, each voice a ripple in the changing current. It was a quiet rebellion, a collective decision to reclaim our lives from the clutches of a self-proclaimed queen. In the midst of this transformation, Karen's protests grew smaller, her voice a fading echo against the rising chorus of quiet defiance. The balance of power shifted imperceptibly, like the turning of a tide. She found herself sidelined, not by force, but by the simple act of neighbors choosing to stand together. The irony of it all was not lost on me. Karen, who had strived for control, now watched from the periphery as the community wove itself back together, stronger for the trials it had endured. Her plans unraveled not with a bang, but with the gentle persistence of a new dawn. In the days that followed, life in our little corner of the world resumed its natural rhythm. The morning ritual of kids catching school buses, joggers pacing the sidewalks, and the hum of daily life replaced the echoes of conflict. The Jeep, ever present, became just another fixture, its presence unremarkable in the tapestry of suburbia. And Karen. She stayed, of course, lingering at the edges of our consciousness like a half-forgotten fable. Her antics, once the centerpiece of community gossip, faded into the background noise of everyday life. An occasional flare-up here, a whispered complaint there. But Her reign as the HOA tyrant was over. As the sun set on those tumultuous days, I couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all, the quiet irony of victory achieved through steadfastness and solidarity. In the end, we had reclaimed our peace, not by bending to the will of one, but by standing firm together,